I thought I knew what love was, until I found her in another man's arms. A year. She'd been lying to me for a year, betraying every promise we made. I worked my hands to the bone for her, for our family, while she played the loving wife by day and a lover by night. The kids, our home, all of it built on lies. How could she look me in the eyes and tell me she loved me? That same mouth that whispered, "I love you," was kissing him, wasn't it? How do you forgive the unforgivable? You don't. You burn it all to the ground. Jonathan Fremont had just come home after working for 8 hours, plus 4 more in overtime. He was a diesel mechanic at the Caterpillar dealership in town. He wasn't a boss, but he was one of their best mechanics. Jonathan liked not being the boss because he enjoyed doing his job. Things had been busy lately because there were big forest fires going on in 4 different places, along with smaller ones popping up everywhere. Equipment was breaking down all over, and Jonathan was needed almost all the time. Since mid-July, Jonathan had been working extra hours, and now it was almost time for the kids to go back to school at the end of August. He had been getting up early and coming home late all summer, both on weekdays and weekends. But Jonathan wasn't complaining. He was happy with all the extra work because it meant more money. He needed it to pay for their big 4-bedroom house with 2.5 baths and a 2-car garage in a nice neighborhood. Jonathan and his wife Susan had bought that house 2 years ago. Their children, Cindy, Joey, and Nancy, were growing up and needed their own rooms. Because of the fires, Jonathan was bringing home good paychecks. He was tired, very tired, but also happy. The extra money was important. Jonathan felt proud that he could buy that nice house. He enjoyed being a good provider for his family. He loved his family and was proud of them. If you asked him, he would say he had the best wife and kids in the world. Like other families, they had their own problems. It wasn't anything serious, just little things. Susan sometimes worried about her weight after having 3 kids, and Jonathan had his own weight issues too. Susan often wished Jonathan would join her at gatherings with friends and neighbors instead of staying home or going fishing. They were both content with their small issues that never turned into big fights. When Jonathan walked into the house, it felt too quiet. Usually he could hear the kids playing. They should still be up. It was too early for bedtime, and they couldn't be at a neighbor's house since it was too late for that. Jonathan wondered if he had missed something. Had Susan told him they were staying overnight with someone like their grandparents? It was clear they weren't in the house, but Susan was there. She was sitting at the far corner of the dining room table, her hands folded on top of it, looking at Jonathan with a worried and thoughtful expression. For a moment, Jonathan thought she might have been crying. Her eyes looked watery and red. "Jonathan, we need to talk," she said, looking down at her hands instead of at him. Jonathan felt a wave of worry. The way Susan looked was familiar. He remembered it from the day she told him that his father had passed away suddenly. Just thinking about that day made Jonathan feel weak. He pulled out a wooden chair and sat down across from Susan, unable to speak. He could only watch her, but she wouldn't meet his gaze. Susan looked far away, lost in heavy thoughts. He sensed that she didn't want to be there, and his stomach felt uneasy. Susan stared at her hands while she spoke in a quiet, sad voice. "Jonathan, I care about you so much. You know that, right?" Jonathan swallowed hard. His throat was dry, making it hard to reply. "Yes." Susan looked up at him, searching his face for reassurance. "You need to believe that now more than ever. I have some important things to tell you. You need to understand how much I care about you and how much we mean to each other. You have to trust in what we have. This is really important. I care about you a lot." Her voice shook with emotion. Jonathan felt cold sweat on his back. His hands began to tremble as he struggled to gather his thoughts. The weight of her words and the heavy silence made his mind race with worries. Memories of his father's death flooded back and he felt overwhelmed. Deep down, he sensed that this moment could change everything. Whatever Susan was about to say, life would never be the same again. For what felt like forever, Susan stared at him without speaking. She didn't meet his questioning eyes. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall, breaking the quiet in the room. Finally, she started to speak. Sometimes her voice was soft and barely heard. Other times it was strong and filled with emotion. "I'm afraid of you hearing this from someone else, but I need to tell you this for my own sake, too. I can't keep this to myself any longer. I've held on to it for over a year. I can't hold it in anymore. It's not fair. Keeping it a secret is painful and it feels wrong. This matters too much to me. We've talked about this so many times. We decided I needed to tell you. There's no other choice. If I don't explain myself, you won't understand. If you hear it from someone else, you might think badly of me, and I don't want that. You need to really get it. We need to talk about this openly and honestly so you can understand. I hope you can love me enough to understand. If you can't, I don't know what I'll do. I just need to trust you and your love for me. There's no other way, she said, her shoulders slumping in defeat. For a moment, the room was silent, the only sound being the ticking clock. Susan didn't speak again. She just stared at her hands, feeling heavy with her thoughts. She lifted her head once, twice, 3 times, ready to talk, but then looked down again and said nothing. Finally, after a long pause, as if each word was a struggle, she said, "Jonathan, I've been seeing someone this past year." Her gaze was fixed on Jonathan, waiting for his reaction, but also challenging him to respond. She was prepared to tell him the truth. "Jonathan, he's a kind man who has been through a lot. The year before I met him, he lost his wife in an accident. Their car flipped over on the highway. He was driving, and even though it wasn't his fault, he blamed himself. He's been very sad ever since. Even with all my love and care, he still feels down sometimes." Jonathan felt dizzy. Did he hear her right? She was being unfaithful? It felt like a hard blow to his chest, leaving him shocked and numb to any pain. He struggled to find words. "You're saying that for the past year, you've been with someone else? You've thrown away our marriage and vows just for some fun? You don't care about the kids or me? You just want excitement." Susan's eyes flared with anger. "Jonathan, how can you think that of me? Do you really love me so little? You think I would throw our relationship away? I'm ashamed of you for thinking that. How could you say such a thing about your own wife, the mother of your children? You're supposed to love and honor me. Those were our vows." She spoke each word with strength, hoping it would make him understand. Then she paused, turning her head to calm herself and the situation. Silence filled the room for a while. In her eyes, feelings of love and care began to show. A soft sigh came from her, as if remembering happier times. "Believe me, he's not a bad person, Jonathan. This isn't what you think. It's about caring for someone who really needs help. It's about the special feelings I get in return, something I can cherish in my heart as I grow older. Something for when no one cares about me anymore." "Yes, we have problems in our relationship," she said. "But it's not only about that. It's about love. It's about being aware of what the people you love need and want. That's why this connection matters so much." Jonathan felt a painful twist in his stomach. His mind focused on one terrible thought. Susan loved this man. She was going to leave him for this man. He was losing her. That was the reason for this whole talk. Had she already packed her things? Or maybe she had packed Jonathan's? Tears filled his eyes as he leaned forward in pain, barely able to look at Susan, and asked, "You love him?" That was all he could manage to say. Susan saw the hurt in his body and the sadness in his eyes. She understood why she had to talk to him like this. She knew Jonathan might not react the way she hoped, yet she answered honestly, "Yes, I love him. I love him a lot. He is very important to me." Then, in a soft and caring voice, she added, "But I love you too. I've never stopped loving you, and I never will. I just love you both, in different ways." Looking deeply into Jonathan's eyes, wanting him to understand, she continued, "I'm not going to leave you for him or anyone else. Please don't think that. You are my husband, the father of my children, and the love of my life, my soulmate." With a sad sigh, she looked out the window into the endless space outside and said, "One day I know it will be over between him and me. He is too young for me to see as a partner. In time he will find someone else who will be his true love. Then I will step back, holding on to our memories." Gasping for breath and feeling anger rise inside him, Jonathan stood up and began to walk back and forth between the kitchen and the dining room. "Who is he?" he demanded. Her eyes turned cold and serious. "Jonathan, who he is doesn't matter. What we do is not your business. That is between him and me. You are not part of that." Jonathan hit his fist against the wall, making a crack in the plaster. "How could you think I would accept this? Are you serious?" A mocking smile appeared on her face. "What will you do, Jonathan? Divorce me?" "I don't think so. Do you know what a divorce would mean for you? Maybe you should talk to a lawyer before you say any more foolish things. This is a state where divorces can happen without blame, and we both know how this will turn out. We've talked about this before. If you go through with the divorce now, Jonathan, I will make sure to take what I need. I will put my children and myself first. I won't worry about you. You will not just pay child support, but you will also have to give me alimony, pay the court fees, my car payment, and the mortgage for this house. Even with all the overtime you've been working, you won't be able to afford anything except maybe a cardboard box. You might end up sleeping in your car or at your job eating simple meals for many years." Her face softened a bit, but she still looked strong. She leaned forward, resting on the table. "Have you thought about the kids? How will they fit into this? Do you understand how our divorce will affect them? Have you thought about how not being around will change your relationship with them?" Leaning back in her chair, crossing her arms and placing her hands on her upper arms, she smiled mockingly. "No, Jonathan, divorce is not an option." Jonathan was surprised to see how hard Susan had made things for him. He knew he needed to say something strong to her. "What if I cheated on you? How would you feel then? That sounds fair, right? What's good for one is good for the other." She shot him an angry look and replied quickly, "Don't be silly, Jonathan. Look at yourself. You're not a kid anymore. You're losing your hair. Your stomach hangs over your belt. You're a married man in your middle age with 3 kids and a wife to support. Who would want you? Women our age want honesty, comfort, and safety. You can't give any of that. If you embarrass me, I will file for divorce." For some time, they just stared at each other with anger. Then Susan's eyes softened as she looked out the window, lost in thought. Silence filled the room, with only the tick of the clock and Jonathan's heavy breaths breaking it. After a moment, Susan turned her focus back to Jonathan. Her eyes were no longer cold. They were warm and caring. Jonathan felt a change in his feelings. "Jonathan, this doesn't have to be like this. I still love you. I am still your wife, just like I always was. No one has taken anything from you. I am still here, and I always will be." She continued, "If you love me enough, what happens between me and him shouldn't change our love for each other. Maybe in time our love can even grow stronger because of this. What happens next is up to you. I'm still here for you. I want to keep our connection strong. I'm even trying to bring back old friendships and make new ones." Jonathan woke up with a bad headache. His marriage was over. His wife was gone, spending time with another man, which she had been doing for over a year. He made his way to the bathroom and stepped into the shower. The cold water helped wake him up until it warmed up. After washing, he dried off and looked at himself in the mirror. She had some truth in what she said. His hair, cut cheaply at the barber, was getting thin on top and nearly bald in some spots. His belly was bigger than he wanted, now a size 42 instead of the 34 he used to wear. He looked tired, like the older men he used to joke about when he was younger, thinking he would never look like that. He lifted his arms, still strong from hard work. "I need to lose this belly," he thought. He looked at his hair from different sides. At last, he found the old clippers from when he had a beard for a few months. She never liked it, and he had given in to her wishes. 5 minutes later, Jonathan had his razor out and smiled at his reflection. Half a can of shaving cream made his head look strange. He was new to this, so it took him a few tries to get it right. Better, not great, but better. Leaning in closer to the mirror, he plucked 2 stray hairs from his eyebrows. With little scissors, he trimmed the nose hairs that seemed to grow faster than those on his head. He was trying not to think about what to do next. Should he take her back? Could he be with a woman who had betrayed their marriage? She had admitted it without any shame, then walked away, leaving him to make a tough choice. There was no way he could accept that. Maybe an accidental mistake could be forgiven, but an ongoing affair with a man she said she loved? She wasn't perfect either. Since their youngest was born, she had gained weight. At 34, she had changed in many ways. She cut her hair short, saying it was easier to care for. Not that he had a say anymore. He hadn't mattered in years. Jonathan rubbed his chin and decided not to shave. He had always liked having a beard. He looked through his clothes, mostly old ones, since he preferred to spend money on his family rather than himself. He picked the best clothes he had and got dressed to face the first day of his new life. He wasn't a wealthy lawyer or a CEO, not a clever accountant or an ex-Navy SEAL. He was a simple man, a diesel mechanic, but he believed in action, so he drove to the bank. It didn't take long to take out all their money, though it wasn't a lot. Thanks to overtime, they had saved nearly $7,000. Before the extra work hours began, they lived almost entirely on what they earned each month. The only times their savings grew were when he got his yearly bonuses or tax refunds. One day he crossed the street and opened a new bank account, putting in $1,000. The bank was glad to have him as a customer, and he even got a new toaster oven as a thank you gift. Next, he faced a tougher task. Jonathan walked into the Caterpillar dealership and wrote a letter to quit his job. His boss tried to change his mind, but Jonathan was set on his decision. He explained his reasons and left with a promise that if things got better, he could come back to work. When he left, he got his last paycheck, which included money for his unused vacation time. He changed his health insurance and took his wife off of it, as well as canceled the life insurance from his job. He could get a new plan to protect his children. With these important things done, he went home to make some phone calls. He canceled their one credit card. It was easy. It had a low limit, and since they couldn't afford to have debt, they paid it off every month. In another call, he took his wife off his cell phone plan. He realized he had missed breakfast and lunch and was feeling hungry. It had been a busy morning. When he opened the fridge, he saw there was nothing healthy to eat. All he found were soda, snacks, cold cuts, bacon, and instant meals. No wonder they both had gained weight. Jonathan quickly cooked some eggs and made a sandwich. It wasn't the healthiest choice, but it was the best he could manage at the moment. After finishing these tasks, he felt unsure of what to do next. His actions had mostly been driven by instinct. Last night he felt angry and sad. This morning he wanted to take care of himself and stop helping her. Now he felt lost. There was too much on his mind, and it was racing. He realized he couldn't go through this alone. Thinking of his family, he decided to visit his grandfather's house. If he had to choose between talking to Grandpa Max or his mother, he would pick the old man. He wasn't sure how his mom would react. Grandpa was a straightforward guy and would give him honest advice. The old man was surprised to see Jonathan at his door. "John, what's with your new look?" Only Grandpa Max called him John, which made Jonathan nervously rub his bald head. "Grandpa, I need some advice." Grandpa Schritter was a tough man, the son of German immigrants. His father had built a ranch from nothing, and Grandpa had made it bigger. He didn't have many friends, but the ones he had were loyal and shared his beliefs. He was strict with his kids. Rules were to be followed, or there would be trouble. His mother often remembered the time she wore a skirt that showed part of her knees and got disciplined for it. You might say he was from a different time. His honesty and values helped the ranch grow and succeed. While others relied on smooth-talking lawyers and long contracts, Max Schritter believed in the power of a handshake. His brother, Uncle Len, was the oldest. He took charge of the ranch and lived in a big house about 100 yards from the old family home. He grew up with strong beliefs in hard work, fairness, honesty, and loyalty to friends. It took only half an hour to share the whole story. The old man did not tolerate lies, especially when it came to family. "What will you do about this?" was his only question. "It's not that easy. We have 3 kids. She's giving you trouble. Take the kids and move on." Jonathan smiled a little. If only it were that simple. "It doesn't work like that anymore, Grandpa. The mothers usually get the kids, especially since she takes care of them. She'll want half of everything, maybe even more. I'll need to pay for childcare for 3 kids and help support her since she can't work." "That won't work," the grandfather replied firmly. Jonathan was surprised by his grandfather's strong words. He didn't often hear him speak so openly. "It's the law, Grandpa. I don't like it, but I think she knows most of it. She thinks she has the upper hand." "I can't believe what you're saying." The old man stood up and went to grab his old rotary phone. Jonathan knew that phone was older than he was. "Bill, Max here. I need your advice on something. When can you come over?" After a short chat, his grandfather hung up. "What's your plan?" he asked. I want to sell the house. I can't afford it. I hope the kids and I could stay here. I'm not paying for her living with someone else. She can find her own place. Jonathan realized they did not have any money tied up in the house after 2 years. Suddenly he remembered that it was the same amount of time she had been with another man. Buy her the house she wanted, and she started seeing someone else. Did she really care about him? His grandfather nodded. No problem. I still have 4 empty rooms here, filled with junk from the past 50 years. It will be good to have some young energy around, but who will watch the kids while you work? I'm not going to work. Let her get child support and alimony from a man without a job. How will you get by? The old man asked. I was hoping Uncle Len would let me help on the ranch off the books. I have experience from all the summers I spent here. He can pay you, and you can make sure the kids are taken care of. Maybe I could get a small salary for my expenses. I don't need much. Just car insurance, food, and clothes. His grandfather looked at him sternly. No small salary. Anyone living under my roof must work. We'll find a way to keep your money safe from her. We'll need to find someone to help take care of your kids. Jonathan heard a truck drive up to the house. He could easily hear the loud sound of the diesel engine from inside. He wanted to open the door, but then Bill Wesley, a good friend of his grandfather's, walked in without knocking. Why do you look so stressed, Max? Bill asked. After 20 minutes of talking about the problems, Bill seemed fed up. It's mostly true. She'll likely get the kids, and you'll have to pay her child support. You still need to pay the mortgage and provide for her. You said her lawyer suggested this? He's a lawyer? Jonathan nodded. That's a big mistake. What do you know about him? Not much. He's younger and works with divorce cases. That's about it. I heard his wife died in an accident a couple of years ago while he was driving. Not many like that around. Let me make some calls and find out more. Bill leaned back, looking serious. What have you done about your money? I took everything out of the accounts and quit my job. Good move. A lot of new lawyers will tell you to take only half. That's not a good plan. She'll get half later, but don't make it easy for her. Make her work for it. Stay in control. Why did you quit your job? I was working too much overtime. I don't want the courts to see my pay based on a 60-hour work week. I can't pay much if I'm broke and out of work. Would you have a chance to get fired instead of quitting? The courts usually look at that better. If you quit, they see what you earned before. If you get fired, they are more likely to be fair. Jonathan smiled at Bill's advice. Bill Wesley had been a district judge for a long time and had just retired a few years ago. He really understood how things worked. Is her family involved in this? That doesn't sound like the Finnegans I know. They don't know yet. Nobody knows. She wants to keep it a secret. Really? She thinks she can hide this? Bill took out a very old flip phone and looked through his contacts for a moment. He waited for someone on the other end to pick up. Jimmy, this is Bill. I've got some bad news for you. I wish I didn't have to be the one to tell you. No, nothing like that. Your granddaughter, Susan, the one married to the Fremont kid, she's not being honest with him. No, I'm serious. No, she told him last night. Said it's been happening for a while. She doesn't want to leave him. At least, that's what she says. She wants him to just accept it. No way! Do you think he's just going to accept that? Yeah, I know, it's tough to hear. She always was a selfish person. Not sure what will happen, but it's not looking good. I thought you should know. Sorry to be the one to tell you. Sure, I'll pass that on to him. Bill looked at Jonathan with anger in his eyes. She broke her grandpa's heart. Nobody wants to think their kids could turn out this way. He's sorry, he said. Thanks, this is hard to believe. His grandfather spoke up. You mentioned she might come back today? You need to get home and take charge. Make sure she knows you don't support what she's doing. No good man would. I think I've already done that. What about the house you bought? I guess I'll let the bank take it back. The old judge added, if her name is on the papers, she can stop you from doing that. I don't know what else I can do. For now, I'd suggest you stay in the house, manage your money, and stop making payments. You didn't hear this from me, but you can keep some cash hidden away. Drive to Oklahoma and lose some of it in the casinos. Take a couple of months if you can. Get everything sorted out and fall so far behind on your payments that you have no way back. Then, you can deal with her. If you divorce her now, it will be tough. Just keep it cool for now. His grandfather looked him over. I hate to say it, but you've let yourself go, son. You'll be looking for someone new soon. Use this time to get ready. I know it seems like you can't find someone else, but there are plenty of people out there. I hope you're not looking for that kind of relationship yet. Your kids need a good role model, not some fool. I'm not ready to date, Grandpa. Plus, I'm still married. Not really. She left you, remember? You had no say in it. She has a new life now. What you had is over. You don't owe her anything. We can talk all day, but it won't help. Go home. I'll talk to Len about helping you. Stop by tomorrow and let's see what Bill finds out. Jonathan went home feeling better. His feelings about his wife's surprise visit were supported by his family. There wasn't much to do, and he missed his family already. He wondered if he had rushed too much when he quit his job and closed the accounts. But there was no use thinking about the past. At least he felt more in control now. He would not give in to what she said was her right. He looked in the fridge again to see what he could eat. He noticed the stack of takeout menus and frowned. No wonder they had no money and were not healthy. He tossed the TV dinners and menus into the trash. When Susan hadn't called or shown up by 7 o'clock, he drove to the grocery store and filled his cart with healthy food. When he got back home, Susan was waiting for him. She stepped back, surprised. Jonathan? She didn't expect to see him like this. Susan, he said calmly, carrying the grocery bags to the kitchen. She followed him. I want to say I'm sorry for how things went last night. That was not how I wanted it to be. I never meant to hurt you. Are you feeling calm now? Sober? Can we talk this out like adults? He shrugged. It doesn't matter how you say it. Knowing you threw our marriage away hurts no matter what. Did you find what you were looking for? She scolded herself again. Why had she brought that up? She knew it would hurt him. Please, Jonathan, I shouldn't have mentioned it. That was a mistake. I care about you, and that's not the problem. He gave a light laugh. Not anymore, that's for sure. What do you want, Susan? His words shocked her. He had never spoken to her like that in 11 years of being married. She felt anger rising, but tried to stay calm. She didn't want to go through the same fight as before. I want you to understand what I'm feeling. This isn't easy for me. I didn't want things to change like this. I love you and I won't leave you. Got it. Now you've fallen for someone else. I understand. Thanks for that. Is there anything else you want to say? Maybe you want to tear my heart out and dance on it? Please tell me how I'm not good enough, how I can't meet your needs, how I deserve to be treated badly. I'm sure you have a lot of hurtful things ready to say, just like last night. No, Jonathan, I don't want to hurt you. I care about you. You're my husband, the father of our kids, my soulmate. I'll always care about you. I just need to support him. Can't you see? This is important to me, to us. Then go to him. I don't want to be in the same house with a wife who doesn't want me. Go, please. Your being here hurts too much. She started crying. I know you don't really mean that. You're just trying to hurt me. I know you care. And you'll see what's best for all of us, especially for the children. I'm bringing them home tomorrow. They don't need to know about our problems. Nobody has to know. This is between us. I expect that if we have any issues, we can talk about them in private. And what am I supposed to say when you're staying the night at his place? I don't do that. I never have until last night, and I didn't want to then. You scared me with how you acted. I thought you might hurt me. I couldn't stay here. I've never done that before. Things can stay like they have for the past year. I don't think so. If you're waiting until tomorrow to pick them up, it sounds like you'll be spending the night with him again. Please don't call him that. He's a nice man, a good man. Sure, the kind of man who can't find his own woman and has to come between us. So nice, so good, so honorable. Go to him before I say something I regret. She got up and slowly walked away. I'm going to give you some time, she said. I know this is a big surprise for you. I wish I could have told you in an easier way. I care about you, and I never wanted to hurt you. You could tell me it's not true, that my loving wife isn't being unfaithful. Stop it, Jonathan. I am not what you say I am. I can't believe you would say that. I'm not fooling around. This isn't just a silly fling. I truly care about him. Calling me names and putting me down doesn't help at all. Are you trying to make me end our marriage and destroy everything we have? Did you really care for him when you broke your promises, left our family, and hurt me? Did you care then? She stood there, mouth open. He had a point. She remembered feeling guilty that first time, coming home, crying in the shower until the water turned cold. She had told Rich they could never do it again. She did care for him, but did she love him? No, she hadn't loved him. She just liked how he made her feel needed. She turned and walked away, angry that he had made her feel guilty about something she thought was good. He had needed her. Once she was gone, Jonathan struggled not to finish off the rest of the gym beam. Instead, he made a salad, ate a chicken breast without skin, and went for a long walk. It didn't really help him feel better, but at least he didn't feel worse. The next day, Jonathan got up with the alarm and was at his grandfather's house by 8 a.m. He tried to treat it like any other workday. He was surprised to see all of the old man's crew there waiting for him. They were a close group. On the mantelpiece above the fireplace was a picture of all 5 of them, dressed in their green uniforms as Eagle Scouts. They had been best friends all their lives. It's hard to believe anyone could have 4 good friends they could count on for over 60 years nowadays. They had always faced problems together, as a team. Jonathan felt lucky to have them in his corner. He was taken to the dining room where a big breakfast was ready. There were 7 places set at the table. Looking around again, he saw his Uncle Len was also there. He took a seat, and Bill's wife came out to offer coffee to anyone who wanted some. Behind her, Daryl's wife came in with a plate of hotcakes. Jonathan laughed. "Well, there goes my diet," he said. Uncle Len picked up a couple of hotcakes and put them on Jonathan's plate. "Enjoy. Trust me, working as a ranch hand will burn off any calories you eat. You're starting from the ground up." Along with Bill and his grandfather, 2 of the other men had retired. Daryl Smith had served in the Army for many years and now did a little substitute teaching, but not more than a couple of weeks each year. James Crum was another old German immigrant who owned the ranch next to Jonathan's grandfather's. His 2 sons ran the ranch now, but he still kept involved and went to all the cattle auctions without fail. Once a soldier in the Vietnam War, Jonathan had joined with his friend Daryl, but left the service after serving 2 tours. Carl Jenkins's family owned the first grocery store in town and a hardware store, too. They had always done well, making money regardless of the weather or changes in the beef market. It seemed like everyone knew about Jonathan's troubles. When the casual talks quieted down, Bill started to speak. "First, we want you to know we support you 100%. I hope it's okay that our wives are part of this talk. They might give a woman's view on things. You had to expect that we couldn't keep them out of it." "That's fine, sir. I understand," Jonathan replied. "How much does your mother know?" Bill asked. "She doesn't know anything yet. I've only told you and Grandpa. She needs to be told. It wouldn't be good for her to find out that her father and brother knew before she did. You should tell her today, all right?" Jonathan nodded. He was not looking forward to that talk. "Okay. The man's name is Rich Patton. He worked as a paralegal at a law firm called Bell and Richards. After his wife died, he went back to school for his law degree, which he could afford thanks to a big insurance payment. I'm not sure if he has passed the bar exam yet, but it sounds like he might. People say he's pretty smart and liked by others, but that doesn't change anything. I know this is hard to hear, but everyone at the law firm seems to know about your wife's actions. The only thing they didn't know was she was married. It seems she was hiding that part." The former judge had everyone's attention while they ate breakfast. Jonathan noticed 4 older women standing near the kitchen, listening closely. He bit into a thick piece of apple-smoked bacon. "The main question before we discuss further is whether there's any chance to fix things. She is the mother of your kids, 3 of them under 10, right?" 5, 8, and 10, Jonathan replied. His grandfather then asked, "Do you want her back? That's the big question. Can you forgive her and take her back?" "Maximilian," one of the women suddenly said. Jonathan recognized her as the judge's wife. "You shouldn't speak so harshly. We don't know her side of the story. Let's not make this harder than it has to be." The judge turned to his wife. "Judith, you promised to wait until you were asked for your opinion. I won't let you make this more difficult for him. She made mistakes, yes. But it's his choice if he wants to work things out for the family. Don't make her seem worse than what she is. She has been unfaithful for over a year, and now expects him to accept that someone else is involved. What do you call a partner who has an affair for so long and won't end it?" "Maybe she's confused? It's really up to them to sort it out if they want to. Let him think for himself." Jonathan finally spoke up. "She came over again last night. She didn't stay. She went back to him. No apologies, just that she never meant to hurt me. She didn't plan to end her relationship. I can't accept that. The colonel spoke up for the first time. What if she did break it off? Is it too late? Jonathan thought for a moment. I don't know. If she realized how much she hurt me, if she really felt sorry, and I believed it wouldn't happen again, then maybe. That's a lot of ifs for a maybe. Do you think that could happen? Honestly, no. She says she loves him. She's in love with him. She says he's a great partner. I can't get past that. She had no right to tell me about her life with him. She was trying to hurt me. She threatened to divorce me and take my kids from me. She wants to make choices that affect us all and laughs at the idea of me moving on, saying if I did, she'd divorce me too. No, I want her out of my life. The colonel's wife, Diane, spoke next. That's not going to happen, Jonathan. She is the mother of your kids. Like it or not, she'll be a part of your life for the next 13 years at least, unless you plan to abandon them. They're my kids. My responsibility, Jonathan said sharply. Sure, but they're hers too. You can divorce her, but if it's bitter and hurtful, you're going to have to deal with that for many years, Diane replied. Hurtful? Like telling me she was seeing someone else? That she'd stay with him and make my life hard if I caused any trouble? Jonathan replied angrily. His grandfather stood up. Ladies, we invited you to give your advice. You agreed to let us ask for your input. I don't think you're helping right now. Please, let us talk alone for now, and we'll involve you once he decides what to do. There was some murmuring, but the women moved to the living room, leaving the men alone. What do you want, Jonathan? State it clearly, one of the older men said. I want her out. I want the kids. I don't want to support her. I want to protect my interests without it affecting my children. I'd like to see them separate. The older men looked at each other and started to smile. The colonel nodded. Great. We're all in agreement then. It's a serious situation. Now we need a plan. After 3 hours of steady discussion and debate, they finally had a rough plan ready. They brought the women back in for lunch, and while they weren't thrilled about it, they agreed to support the plan. Jonathan called his house and left a message. I won't be home tonight, he said, nor tomorrow night. I'll see you Sunday. Leaving the group to handle the first steps, Jonathan went to his mother's house, wanting to be there when she finished work. She was surprised to see him and his new look. What brings you here? You could have called, she said. I need to talk to you, Mom. That's important, he said. She felt upset just a few minutes into his talk. Will you think about it again? She is your kid's mother, Jonathan. You've spent many years together. Is divorce the only way out? No one really wins in a divorce. I can't see another choice, Mom. Honestly, she won't leave him. She says she loves him. I can't take that. His mom nodded. It breaks my heart too, sweetie. I need to say that. Mine too, believe me. What can I do? Do you need help with the kids on weekends or evenings? Right now I'm living in the house. I'm not starting the divorce just yet. She might want to soon, but I won't help her. I won't pay so she can be with him. I'm cutting her off. If she wants money, she'll have to find a job. I'll pay for the house and food and take care of the kids, but she won't get anything unless a court says so. His mom nodded. She should get a job. She'll need it when this is over. I want you to come with me to talk to her parents. I don't want them taking care of the kids. I'm sure they wouldn't do that, his mom said, looking worried. They've been doing it. The only question is if they know why. 20 minutes later, they were knocking on the Finnegans' door. Jonathan, you look so different, Susan's mom said. You missed them. Susan picked up the kids over an hour ago. Actually, I came to talk to you and Dad. Can we come in? Of course. Carolyn, it's nice to see you. Can I get you a drink? She called into the house. Terry, Jonathan and his mom are here. A soft drink would be nice, his mom said. Ginger ale? His mom nodded and he said, I'll have the same, thank you. They sat in the living room when Brenda brought them their drinks, with Terry close behind. Brenda sat down. Is something wrong? You don't look. Well, he nodded. I need you to stop helping Susan while she's distracted from her family. Brenda looked shocked and Terry turned red. How can you say that? Terry asked, getting angry. For a year, she's been with someone else and you're watching the kids while she does. I want you to stop. I think it's not right to support her choices. Brenda was the first to respond. That's silly. She loves you and the kids. She's not doing anything wrong. We wouldn't help her if she was. She spent the last couple of nights away from home while you watched the kids. She told me 2 nights ago that she's in love with him. She doesn't see him at night. She stays home with her family. That means she sees him during the day. I doubt she takes the kids with her. Are you really saying you haven't been watching our kids several times a week? Brenda sat with her mouth open. She said she was doing volunteer work. Unless there's something else going on, the only thing that's broken is our marriage, Jonathan replied. Terry looked upset. Did she tell you? Is she having an affair? She is having an affair. She won't stop seeing him. She says she loves him, but she wants me to take care of her and the kids. I won't keep giving her money while she's with another man. Brenda was about to cry. I can't believe this. I can believe she would use us to hide what she's doing. Can you please stop? You are helping her ruin our marriage. There's no chance for us as long as she is with him. Do you understand that? Terry's face was red with anger. So you think you did nothing wrong? Were you unfaithful? No, you have no reason to think that. The only thing I did was work too many hours to pay for the house she wanted. I may have gained some weight, worked too much, and came home too tired to pay enough attention to her, but I don't see how that's a reason for her to start seeing someone new for a year. Do you think that's fair? Her father glared at him. I don't know what's right or wrong. I only hear your side. I'll wait to hear her side before I decide. Sure, I get it. Daddy's little girl can do no wrong. She couldn't possibly be at fault, right? Stop watching the kids so she can be with someone else, Jonathan snapped. I think you should leave now, Terry growled angrily. That's fine with me. What kind of people help their daughter abandon her kids all the time? Who raises someone like that? Jonathan shot back, annoyed. Get out! Terry screamed, losing his temper. Carolyn couldn't believe how heated it had become so fast. She looked at Brenda, filled with sadness. Jonathan ignored them and walked to the door. Congrats on raising a child who doesn't care about her family, Dad. Good job, he added as a parting insult. His mother scolded him. How could you talk to them like that? I wanted him mad. She'll feel bad if she's been hiding this from them. If they knew, then they deserve it. Jonathan drove north toward the Oklahoma border. His mission was clear. Collect as many losing receipts as he could, get a hotel room for a couple of nights, and maybe have some fun. He felt no guilt about moving on. The moment his wife admitted to her long affair and said she wanted to keep seeing someone else, their marriage was over. Now they were just waiting for the paperwork to go through. His phone started ringing soon after he left town, but he turned it off before he crossed the state line. He thought things were only going to get worse. Oh well, she made her choices. Now she could handle them. He tried his luck at a few tables, then headed to the bar. It wasn't long before he started talking to a nice woman who was ready to help him feel better. He felt a quick twinge of guilt about paying $400 for her time, like he was being unfaithful. But then he laughed it off. She had been doing this work for a year, so why not him? At least he wasn't getting attached. After that, as he walked her out of his room, he smiled. That was the best experience he had in years, he thought. The woman had a strong presence and was very nice. He spent a good amount of time with her, and he felt pleased. He hoped this feeling would stick. He was determined not to have more problems in his life. It was so great that he tipped her an extra $50. She gave him her business card and told him to reach out if he ever wanted company again. He kept it. The next day, he wandered around the casino for a while. He played some craps and poker, losing a couple of $100s. He collected many receipts from the keno and sports betting rooms, worth thousands of dollars. He enjoyed the show and found another pretty woman who was willing to spend time with him for a few $100s. She was closer to his age and laid back. He managed to get her for only $300 and was even happier with her company than with the woman from the night before. That night, Jonathan felt full, but also lonely in the big bed. He thought about his broken marriage and everything that had happened. How could she have done that to him? To their children? How could anyone be so selfish? The next morning, he slept in and got up to look in the mirror. He shaved his head, making sure it was smooth. He put on some aftershave and trimmed his beard. He almost didn't recognize the man looking back at him. Jonathan pulled into his driveway a little after noon. His wife's car was there, so he got ready for what was coming. As he walked into the house, the kids saw him first and rushed over, laughing and wanting to touch his head. They asked where his hair was, where he had been, and why he hadn't come home. His wife gave him a sharp look, anger simmering just below the surface. He laughed with the kids. "Daddy had some business to take care of out of town. I'm back now, and I won't be leaving again soon." Susan stepped closer to him. "We need to talk, dear," she said quietly. "Soon. I'd like to spend some time with my kids now that they are home from your parents' house." Jonathan sat down in front of the TV with the kids, asking about their time with their grandparents. "I bet you enjoyed staying with them, didn't you? You got to see them a lot. More than your other grandmother." "Yes, a lot more," Cindy, the oldest, replied. "Grandma picks me and Joey up after summer school." The story seemed to twist unexpectedly, Jonathan thought. "And she watches Nancy?" Little Nancy nodded. Susan stood above them. "Jonathan, I'd really like to talk now," she said. "I'd really like to have a faithful wife," Jonathan replied. She stepped back, clearly upset. "Is this what you want? To talk about this here in front of the kids?" she asked. "No, I'll talk to you when I'm ready. It took you 2 years to talk to me. Now you're in a hurry," Jonathan said, looking right at her. She turned and went into their bedroom. "Why's Mom upset?" Joey asked. "Your mom's in trouble. She knows it," Jonathan explained. "Did she break something?" Nancy asked. "Yes, she did," he replied. "It was her wedding vows, his heart, their marriage." He stayed with the kids for a little longer, then went into the bedroom and closed the door. "How could you?" Susan shouted. "I told you we didn't need to get my parents involved." "I told you I didn't want any problems," Jonathan said calmly. "Where were you the last 2 nights?" "Out." "Where were you for the last 2 years?" "Where's out? What were you doing?" "That's none of your business anymore. Once you chose someone else, you lost the right to ask me." She changed the subject. "Why doesn't my phone work? I canceled your service, just like I canceled your health insurance, like I canceled your credit card. Why? Why would you do that? Are you so petty? I'm not going to support you." "I'm not asking for support. I fell in love with another man. Can't you see the difference? So I'm the selfish one? I want my wife to remember her vows and stay with me and our kids? Don't bring the kids into this. No, you did that. You ignored them every day. We didn't spend all our time together that way. I helped him. He needed me." "How exactly did you help him, Susan? Don't talk to me like that. I cooked, did laundry, cleaned a little. I went out with him sometimes. We talked. He listened to me. So you were his wife while we ate takeout. You talked to him while you ignored me and left the kids. You chose him over us. Fine. Let your new husband pay for your phone and your insurance. Let him give you money, buy you nice clothes. You say you're not a bad person? Why are you saying this? It doesn't have to be like this. We were happy last year, weren't we? I never made you go without. Why can't we go back to that? Don't you love me at all? Did you ever love me?" she asked, tears shining in her eyes. "I didn't know you were unfaithful then. Now every time I see you, I picture you with someone else, your younger man. It's not just about that. It's about love and friendship. He cares for me, and I care for him. We love each other. I never said he was better than you. It's just different, that's all. I still care about you. I need him. That's okay. You can see him if you want. But while you are, I can't support it. Don't think he hasn't asked. He is doing well, working hard to barely keep our home," she said, instantly regretting those words. "Which is it, Susan? Is it love, or are you just looking to upgrade? Are you mad because I work hard to give you the house you wanted and take care of our kids? I work 60 hours a week to make sure you have what you need. What do? You don't work and you don't take care of the kids. What do you do for this family?" I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I know how hard you work for us. You just make me so upset. Why can't we have things the way they used to be? Stop seeing him. Be a caring wife and a good mom. Then maybe things can go back to how they were. I didn't throw anything away. I was always here for you. I only saw him when you were at work and the kids were at school. I've always put our family first. Like those 2 nights you were gone, when I was working, when the kids were in school. You pushed me to him. You know that. I was scared of you. I get it. It's always my fault. You did nothing wrong. I didn't. I can't change how I feel. Jonathan sighed. This isn't getting anywhere. Are you going to stop seeing him? No. Then it's up to you. This is my bedroom. You can stay here, but I'm not leaving. I'll support you when you're home, and I'll keep the car paid so you can take care of the kids, but things will be tight here. Why? What do you mean tight? I quit my job. It was taking too much time away from my family. You quit your job without talking to me? Susan said, shocked. You started another relationship without talking to me, Jonathan replied. That's not the same, she argued. I know. It's more complex. I'll work for Uncle Len. I won't earn as much, but we can manage if we are careful. No more extra spending. I don't waste money, she said. How much gas do you use driving to see Rich and your parents every day? How many lunches and coffee dates? It took her a moment to understand what he had said. How? Who said his name was Rich? Richard Patton. Rich is what his friends call him. He's a lawyer living off old money. Nice choice there. It's not like that. It was just a mistake. It wasn't his fault. And he just finished law school and passed the bar exam. He must be very busy because he seems to have a lot of time for you. Stop saying that, she yelled. Jonathan looked at her firmly. I thought you wanted to keep this private. If you're going to shout, we might as well let the kids hear this too. We don't spend all our time together like that. Just so you know, we only see each other a few days a week. Do you think about me on those days? Jonathan asked. She turned red. I told you it's not just about that. Come on, Susan. You're making this so hard. Does it make you feel good to keep this from me? You've made me doubt everything. No, Jonathan, please don't say that. I would never do anything like that. I always make sure everything is okay when I'm home. I wouldn't hurt you. I love you. I'm careful. I don't want to cause you pain. Can we please not discuss this? I love you, and I want us to be happy together. Can't you let me have this? I'll make sure you'll never regret it. I promise. Jonathan shook his head. Tell me when you've stopped seeing him. If I'm still here then, we can see if we can fix our marriage. He turned and left the room, not wanting to keep talking. He made himself a sandwich and watched his wife take one call after another in the bedroom. She came to him while he was cleaning in the kitchen. That was my grandfather. He disowned me. Are you going to make this harder? Do you really want to start something you can't win? Stop seeing him, Jonathan said. I'm going out for a while. I'll be back for dinner. It would be nice if you took some time to cook something for once, she replied. You just got home, she said. We still need to talk. After dinner. Using what he had learned, Jonathan stood at the door of the Tudor 10 minutes later. It was a nice house, bigger than his own. Way more than a single guy needed. The door opened. Yes? Jonathan put his foot in the door. I want you to stop seeing my wife. You had a sad past and now you're hurting my marriage. Just stop. The smaller man looked up in fear. He leaned against the door, trying to close it, but it wouldn't move. I don't know what you mean. Stop seeing Susan Fremont, Mrs. Jonathan Fremont, my wife. Don't ever get in a car with her. If anything happens to her, you'll regret it. I don't want someone with a troubled past around my children. I'm not a danger. It was an accident, the scared man said. You had an incident. You're living off that sadness and now you're with my wife. Stop it. If you don't, I will make sure you know how serious this is. You can't threaten me, the man said, his voice shaky. Stop it, Jonathan said firmly. There are many single women out there. Leave my wife alone. Jonathan walked away, feeling sure he had made his point. When he got home, Susan was not just angry, she was really upset. She marched toward him, but he just walked past her. He picked up their youngest child and sat her on his lap, tickling her until she giggled. I want to talk, Susan said, standing next to him. Go ahead. In private. He shrugged, enjoying the chance to upset her a little more. He walked to the bedroom with Susan close behind and shut the door. You talked to him? You scared him? She said, looking at her husband. Who? I'm not sure who you mean. Come on, you know who I'm talking about. What are you doing? I told him not to see my wife anymore. I think that's fair. You called him a killer? Yes, but that's because of his past. I just told him I didn't want him driving you anywhere. I want you safe, even if I don't agree with your choices. He didn't mean for that to happen. It was an accident. You can't say those things. He was part of it. It ended in loss, just like that. How could you? It nearly destroyed him. He cared. He suffered a lot. So you think if I press him, he'll back off and this will get better? Jonathan asked. She looked at her husband of 11 years. How could he change so much in such a short time? He had become so cold. You don't mean that. You can't. I'd do anything to see you be a good partner again and put our family first. She looked into his eyes and felt a chill. He was being completely honest. He needs me, Jonathan. If you truly love me, you'll understand. He needs me. Let this run its course. Give me a little time. When he's strong enough to handle things on his own, I'll let him go. Can we do that, please? You won't have to worry about it. I'll be careful. No one has to know. I'll be the perfect partner. Just don't make this worse. Do what you must, Susan. I can't stop you. But as long as you're with him, we are just partners in name. You'll stay here and take care of the kids, but our love will be barely alive. I don't know how long that will last. You might not care, but I think you should know. Don't say I don't care, Jonathan. I still love you. I'll prove it. I just need a little time. If you can't accept that, then I'll file for divorce. I'll take the kids and the house. Is that what you want? That will never happen, Susan. Understand that. How can you stop it? The law is on my side. You'll have to work hard for kids you hardly see while I live my life, in my home, with our kids. You'll have nothing. That will never happen, Susan. Believe me, he said sadly. Don't test me on this. She looked at him with worry. He was serious. She knew. After being together for 11 years, it was clear he was serious. You're not going to do anything crazy, are you? She asked. Just stop seeing him and stop threatening me. He looked at her, challenging her to say more. She was the first to look away, rushing into the bathroom, upset about how things had come to this. Carrot and stick. That was what he planned for Susan. Jonathan got tips about the carrot from the wives of the eagle. It made sense that older women would understand how women think. He realized he really had no idea. After he disrupted her day on purpose, Susan was feeling off. He decided to take care of the kids and let her have some time to herself. He got them to bed, though Cindy didn't want to sleep since she was now a big girl. He let her stay up until 9:15 to end the discussion and ease his guilt for leaving for 2 days. Once the house was quiet, he could hear Susan talking on the phone. Maybe it was a friend or two. He didn't know, and at that moment, he didn't care much either. Jonathan poured some wine and grabbed 2 nice glasses. He knocked on the bedroom door and waited for her to finish her call. When she opened it, she looked at him with sad eyes. You don't need to knock. It's your bedroom, too, she said softly. He walked past her and set the tray on the bedside table. He remembered how she had locked the door on him a few nights ago. I didn't want to interrupt, he said. It was just my sister Jenny. She wanted to know what was going on. Everyone is talking. You've really made a mess. He didn't start this mess. She was the one who made choices that hurt their relationship. But he didn't want to argue about that now. He poured her a glass of wine and handed it to her. It's been a tough week, hasn't it? He hoped she would open up and talk. He would listen as best as he could. She nodded. Yes, horrible. I never wanted this, Jonathan. I thought things could stay the same, not like this. Why do you have to make everything so hard? He poured himself a glass and patted the bed beside him. Come, sit with me. Let's talk calmly. I still love you. She climbed onto the bed, sitting cross-legged and facing him. Talk? No shouting or blaming? He reached out to comfort her. Yes, let's talk. What went wrong, Susan? How did I fail you so much that you needed to look for someone else? Slowly, she started to feel warmer inside. He cared about her. It's complicated. I love you. I never stopped loving you. Please tell me you believe that. Of course I do, he replied, even though it was hard for him to fully admit. Would we be here if I didn't? This wasn't meant to happen. It was just a lot of small things that built up. I started chatting with someone at a party. He was having a tough time in his life, and I wanted to help him. The first time I made him smile felt really important. It felt like I was making a difference. She looked at her husband, feeling nervous, and he just nodded. I know this is wrong, but I was so tired. My days were filled with taking care of our toddler, our 6-year-old, and our 8-year-old. I felt like I had no time for myself. You were always busy. I know you were working hard for us, but I felt more like a caretaker than a partner. Jonathan remembered advice about having hard talks. He knew he needed to listen to her without interrupting. I'm sorry, I should have noticed. Long hours can drain anyone, and that's no excuse for ignoring our relationship. I appreciate all you do, she said, even if I don't always say it. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. I know it wasn't completely your fault. I could have talked to you more. but it felt like you were slipping away. There was no time for me, for us. You were drinking more and often sitting on that couch with a beer. I started hating that couch and the TV. You always had time for them, but not for me." Jonathan listened as she spoke. "I often felt stressed. I thought if I kept my worries to myself, you wouldn't feel my pressure. We were letting people go at work, and my tasks kept growing with tight deadlines. I should have shared how I felt instead of keeping it all inside." She wiped her eyes and sniffled. "I was bored, and he became my project. At first, that's all it was. For a year, I didn't see him as anything more. Helping him made me feel good. I loved watching him get better. I felt needed, and that's what I needed. That was our problem. It wasn't a lack of love for you. I never stopped loving you. I was doing something that felt good to me, and I was proud of it. Maybe I spent too much time with another man, but it wasn't romantic. It felt like a job, one I was succeeding at. I can see how that might happen. Everyone wants to feel good about themselves. I hoped being a great mother and wife would be enough for you. I realize now you weren't getting the encouragement from us that you got from him." Jonathan felt it was getting harder to pretend. If she did nothing wrong, then why did she keep it hidden for a year? She finished her wine, and Jonathan poured her another glass. She took a long sip and looked grateful. "It happened so fast I didn't expect it. At first it was slow, a few phone calls, some lunches, coffee together. We talked in a way you and I don't anymore. He was easy to talk to. He wanted to have dinner together, but I couldn't. I was a married woman. Lunch is different from dinner. I said I would make him dinner. At first it felt odd. I was in a strange kitchen and didn't know where anything was. I didn't have any feelings for him. He was just a friend." Jonathan poured himself a drink. He didn't want to hear about this. He only wanted to know why things had gone wrong in their marriage that made her spend time with another man for a whole year. Men usually don't want women as just friends. Jonathan thought that this other man probably wanted more from her. He felt like shaking her to make her see it clearly. The sad act she put on seemed to take advantage of her caring side. Instead of losing his cool, he tried to stay calm and nodded every now and then. After that, it was easier to go to his house than go out. It felt private, and we could talk more honestly. I also didn't want anyone to think there was more to it. "We were just friends," she said, looking at him with hope that he would get it. "Go on," Jonathan urged. She felt relief as she spoke. Surely he would understand now. They just needed a bit of time to work through this. Once he realized the truth, everything would be okay. "I helped him with household chores. He was a mess. I cleaned up a bit and helped him organize things. He had let everything fall apart after his wife's accident. We talked a lot. We could discuss anything. Sometimes we talked about our needs and feelings. We shared parts of our lives. It wasn't anything wrong. It was about talking and understanding," she explained. "He wanted to get closer to you," Jonathan said suddenly, not meaning to say it out loud. She looked shocked. "No, that's not true. He was my friend. He needed me, and I needed him. Good friends can share things like that. That's all it was." He wasn't like that. Jonathan bit his lip, waiting. If he said anything now, it would ruin the whole night. He raised the bottle and poured the last bit into her glass. "It just happened. I was in the kitchen when we started to get closer. I know I should have stopped it, but it felt like a moment between friends. Then suddenly it became more, and I don't even know how I got there." Her hand shook as she took a sip of her wine. She looked up at him, and he noticed tears in her eyes. "I never wanted this to happen. I felt terrible. I came home, showered, trying to wash away my feelings, but the guilt never left. I thought you'd see it in my eyes, but you just took a beer and sat on the couch. You didn't ask me anything, didn't notice the guilt. I wondered if you cared at all." She drank nearly half her wine. "I tried to end it. He called, and I told him to stop. I avoided him and stayed away from places we used to go. I promised myself I wouldn't let this happen again and that I would make things right with you. Then I heard he was in the hospital, and I felt like it was my fault. I felt responsible. I went to him for help, but we promised each other that it could never happen again. I'm really sorry, Jonathan. I tried to stop it. I swear I did. I felt awful seeing him struggle." Jonathan was angry. He was upset with his trusting wife and the man who caused all this trouble. He felt a mix of frustration and sadness as he listened to her talk. Jonathan took the empty glass from her and put it on the bedside table. She was crying, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. If she had just talked about it back then, they could have avoided all of this. He thought maybe he could forgive her for one mistake. But a year of lies? Wanting to see that man again? Threatening him? No, that he could not accept. There would be consequences, and they would both suffer. He helped her sit on the bed. She whined when he let her go, but all he did was turn off the lights. He pulled her close again, holding her gently, letting his hands move down from her sides to her hips. She sat up and took off her shirt, lying back down. She reached out for him. He braced himself for her touch. He felt torn. He was upset with her, but he remembered how familiar and comforting she felt. He gently leaned over her. He couldn't kiss her. There was too much pain. Instead, he kissed her neck. In a moment, she reacted to his touch. He heard her quick breath, and he felt confused. He cuddled against her, wrapping his arm around her. "Love me, Jonathan. Please. It's been too long," she whispered. "No, baby. I won't be second to him. I can't do that." She reached for him. "You are never second. I love you. You're my husband. You're first. You spent time with him. I know that when I go to work, it will happen again. I only get a little time with you, but he can have all of it. I can't accept that." "Honey, it hasn't been a problem. You don't even have to know. When I'm here with you, I'm only yours." He tried. Her words hurt him deeply. He pushed her away and turned his back to her. She didn't understand what had just happened. He had been loving and caring before, but now he seemed closed off. Why couldn't he just love her? Nothing had changed. She snuggled closer to him, wrapping her arms around him, feeling his strong body. She noticed his tension and felt a twinge of guilt. What if she had stopped things earlier? She sighed. It was too late for that now. She needed him to see that nothing would change. They could be good again. Maybe even wonderful again, like in the beginning. Susan felt a wave of emotions as she looked at Jonathan. "Please, Jonathan," she said quietly. "I know you want to talk. I'm here for you. I'll always be here for you." "Not anymore as long as you're with him," Jonathan replied coldly as he turned away from her. Susan felt heartbroken. She didn't hold back her tears and cried herself to sleep. The next morning, Jonathan woke up early. It was a new day, and he felt more in control. He had talked to both his wife and her boyfriend, telling them their actions needed to stop. With help from his family and friends, he started to make sure it did. He decided to quit his old job and go back to work on the family ranch. Susan was still sleeping when he went downstairs for a quick breakfast. He wondered what her day would be like. At the ranch, Uncle Len showed him around. Most of the people were familiar to him. He learned about his new duties and was put under the guidance of Miguel, who had worked with the family for over 20 years. Uncle Len called him to the house for his lunch break. There was a delicious meal ready, and he felt happy to see his grandfather and friends waiting for him. He gave them a brief update about the weekend, his talk with his mother, and his wife's family. He shared what happened between him and his wife. When he finished, his grandfather spoke up. "You should know, the Gray Brigade has taken this on as their project." "The Gray Brigade?" Jonathan asked, confused. The colonel explained, "It's the senior center group, all the retirees. They want some fun in their lives. If things keep going like this, they won't ignore it." "Madge Johnson lives close by," Carl Jenkins said. "Her daughter works at my store. She'll be watching the house." The judge chuckled. "Her parents will be hearing all about it, too. They'll get some interesting comments." "You need to talk to the bank, John. Move all your contact info to my house. We don't want calls at your place that might reach your wife," his grandfather advised. The judge pulled out some papers. "The man's wife, the one who died, was named Heather. I have some pictures. She's buried in the Methodist cemetery. It sounds terrible. He was thrown from the car, but she was trapped inside. She might have been hurt badly in the crash, but then the car caught fire, and she was burned so badly that she was hard to recognize. The lawsuit I won was about that. The car had a history of catching fire in accidents." Jonathan nodded, taking in this useful information. "Thank you, sir." "Not a problem. We take care of our own." He had a plan. Be distant with his wife. Start working against the man at fault. Keep his things safe. Move all financial matters to his grandfather's house. By the end of the day, Jonathan was sore in places he didn't know existed. It felt good to work outside and be with old friends. He went home, cleaned up, and got ready for his second job, his wife. That night, Rich Patton received a call from a number he didn't recognize. "Hello?" he answered. "It hurts, Richie. How could you do this to me? It hurts." A shaky woman's voice said softly. He remembered lying on the hard ground watching his car burn, his young wife still inside. He dropped the phone, the voice bringing back sad memories. "Ah!" the voice cried out in pain on the other end. "No, you can't bring the kids here for us to watch," Brenda said sharply. "But Mom, I need to go out," Susan replied. "You have to take care of your kids. They are your responsibility," her mother snapped back. "Things take so much longer when I'm looking after 3 children," Susan explained. "What else do you have to do? It's not like you have a job or do much around the house anyway. Are you planning to just leave again?" her mother asked coldly. "He's a good man, you don't understand," Susan defended him. "I understand you are making bad choices. We can't even walk around town without being reminded of this mess. Mom, how could you say that? Maybe you should think about going back to your husband. It might not be too late to fix things." "I did nothing wrong," Susan argued. "He is the one who should apologize to me." She was surprised to hear only a busy signal when she tried to speak again. Max Schritter sat at a table talking to the group in front of him. They were gathered in the card room at the senior center, the door closed. There were more women than men, but everyone knew what was happening. They had already split up the work. The phone lines would be busy for a long time. The first call made sure the Gray Brigade knew what was going on. Now they were going to start reaching out to the next generation, making it clear what kind of behavior was acceptable. Cheating wasn't the main issue. It happened. Probably more than half of them had been unfaithful at least once. But being disrespectful, expecting your partner to accept cheating, and almost ignoring your family while trying to keep everything else together was too much. Everyone agreed. This behavior was unforgivable for both people involved. It was either fix the marriage or end it, but not like this. It was shameful. The me generation. They would make sure to remind, scold, and condemn them wherever they went. This kind of behavior could not spread in their town. They assigned tasks and discussed their options. As the room began to empty, the colonel sat with 5 friends. "This is the hard part. Do we all understand what we're getting into? The risk involved?" His friends all nodded in agreement. They were ready for the task ahead. John Crum took charge. They passed out copies of the keys to his house, from the wife's keychain to Jenkins' hardware, and then to those who would help. They gathered pictures, articles, and as much history as they could find. The first step was to get more information. They would be told when he was gone. The Gray Network would keep watch. When they figured out the right time, the first break-in would happen. They would gather all the information they could. Only then would the plan, Guilt, really start. Some of them felt nervous about what they were going to do, but not enough to stop. Susan parked in his garage and quickly closed the door. She took off her hat and sunglasses, feeling silly for trying to hide. This was silly. She wanted to see Rich, and that was her right. She entered the house through the garage and happily accepted his hug. They only spoke about how much they missed each other as they sat down. After a short chat, he looked at her seriously. "How did you mess things up? Nobody at work will even talk to me." Susan felt shocked by what he said. How could she have messed things up? It seemed like he cared more about his problems than what they had been through together. She stood up to him, facing his anger. "You were the one who wanted to stop hiding. You wanted to tell him. You said we should make him accept us and threaten him with divorce and the kids." "How did it get to be everyone's business?" he shouted. "I don't know. People talk. He told his family and mine. They hardly speak to me now. The news must have spread. You were supposed to keep it between just the 2 of you. How did he find out it was me? Where I live?" Rich was furious. "How should I know? I talked to him just like we agreed. You're the one who should have known how he would react. I'm not someone who can't keep things quiet. Am I supposed to change how I think just to please him?" Susan couldn't believe what he was saying. His anger and lack of respect shocked her. She started to put on her clothes before she said something she might regret. Rich reached out to her. "Where are you going? We're not done here. You just arrived. It's been a week since we've been together." You shouldn't talk about Jonathan like that. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's a good person. We're the ones trying to change things. A good person? Starting rumors about us and ignoring you? How is that good? Rich shouted, blocking her way to the door. She fastened her blouse and ran her fingers through her hair. She had time to fix herself up when she got home. She was glad that her mother-in-law bought her excuse about needing to get job applications. I have to leave. I'm going to be late. He stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her. What about us, Susie Q? I miss you. We need to be together. Tell him you'll stay the night here. He already knows. We need to reconnect. You are everything to me. You know how much I love you. I can't stand being apart for days. I need you. She heard his desperate words, knowing they were true. Without her, he would quickly fall back into his old habits. She gently held his face in her hands, trying to show him how she felt. We can figure something out. No staying overnight. What would I tell the kids? Just let your parents take care of them again. She sighed. There's no way they'll watch them again. They've made it clear they won't. She started to move away, but he held on, needing her comfort. Come over after they sleep. I want to feel close to you again. Don't you want that? She nodded, but in her heart she hated being away from her children at night. She smiled to herself, thinking how she didn't sleep much when she was with Rich. Let me think about it, okay? I need to sort things out at home first. Max took a call from Madge. After nearly 2 hours, he felt the weight of the trouble she caused. He called his daughter, feeling angry. What were you thinking, Carolyn? Watching the kids while she went out? She said she was looking for a job, filling out applications. And you believed her after everything she's done? Carolyn was upset when Susan arrived at her door 20 minutes late. She helped get the kids into the car. Before Susan could leave, Carolyn grabbed her arm. Never again! Don't use me to cover for you while you do your own thing. Susan shook with shame from the harsh words. I didn't. Save it. At least clean up before you pick up my kids. What is wrong with you? In the struggle between her shame and anger, anger won. If you don't want to see the kids, that's fine with me. I didn't do anything wrong. You won't have to watch them again. Susan stepped back when Carolyn slapped her face. You're not setting a good example. Jonathan sat with his grandfather after a long, tough day. The last thing he wanted was to discuss his wife's behavior. I don't want to hear it, Grandpa. I really don't care. She had your mother watching the kids, said she was applying for jobs. Jonathan felt his anger rise until his hands shook. Nobody watches my kids unless I say so. Nobody. Not you, not Mom. Don't put this all on your mother. She was trying to help. She has a right to see her grandkids. I don't blame her. It's about what's going on in my home. I'll talk to Mom myself. Mom, what's a Jezebel? Cindy asked. A what? Susan replied, surprised by her daughter's question. Dana's grandma called you a Jezebel. Susan felt her anger grow. That old woman should not talk to her daughter like that. It's nothing, sweetie, just something old people say. But not in front of her daughter if she could avoid it. No more playdates with Dana. For sure, things were different. Rich walked into his old boss's office without noticing the stares and whispers around him. He knew it was good to keep in touch, and his regular lunch plans every month helped with that. He waited in the lobby. After 20 minutes, he felt something was off. Each time the elevator door opened, he noticed the looks and heard the quiet talk. No one would look him in the eye. Something wasn't right. He decided to call. Jean, I'm here in the lobby for lunch, he said. There was a pause on the line. I can't make it today. Did something happen? I haven't seen Eric or Dan either. It's just not a good time right now. Things are really busy. Maybe another time. I have to go. Rich listened to the silence on the other end. A quick call to Eric didn't help either. We've had this lunch plan for over 2 years, Eric, he said. What's wrong? He could hear anger in Eric's voice. Your girlfriend, we thought you were serious and getting engaged. You never told us she was married and had 3 kids. We feel used. My wife would be upset if I had lunch with you. We're not going to lunch anytime soon. Rich looked up from the phone and felt the stares on him. He walked toward the revolving glass door and joined the crowd leaving the building. A year. She's married. He heard people in front of him whisper. Cake and eat it too. 3 kids, someone said behind him. 2 million. Echoed in his head as he rushed down the sidewalk. Summer was hard on the ranch. From dawn to dusk, there was a lot to do, checking fences, working on water systems, and moving animals from place to place. It was almost time for the second hay cut, which had to be done quickly if the weather stayed good. Uncle Len still followed Grandpa Max's way of doing things. Ranching was now mostly done with machines, with trucks taking the place of horses. The Shritters still believed in driving as little as possible. Gas cost money. For many tasks, riding horses was still best, especially for moving animals and checking pastures. Jonathan had forgotten how sore you could get from riding a horse for 10 hours every day. It was tiring to carry heavy packs, dig holes, and change fence posts. He looked forward to the haying because it mostly meant driving around. Most ranch hands had to do everything. A common saying on the ranch was, "If it's broken, fix it." Jonathan was known for his skills with machines and engines. They didn't send ranch vehicles to the shop. If something was broken, Jonathan could fix it. He might have been a bit out of practice on the range, struggling to help with strays, but his mechanical skills and his willingness to do any job earned him respect from the other workers. He liked that. Every evening he came home tired, sore, and hungry, but he was also happy about what he had done during the day. However, when he walked into his house, he would feel sad because of his wife's anger and rudeness. He took a deep breath before going inside, reminding himself of his goals. This situation wouldn't last forever, he told himself. One night, after he went to bed, a picture of a burned body was slipped under his door. It was shocking and hard to recognize as a person. Someone wrote in white marker, "Heather Patton, burned, now in the afterlife." His hands shook as he picked it up. How could someone do something so terrible? Didn't they understand how sorry he felt, how much pain it caused him? It was an accident. It wasn't his fault. He had loved her. He sat on the floor crying until he fell asleep. Meanwhile, Susan was emptying the car of groceries. What should have been a quick 20-minute trip took over an hour. The kids had run inside, each carrying a bag. It had been a hard outing. People gave her angry looks and whispered. Some even laughed quietly, as if the whole world knew about her relationship. "Hey, Susan!" her nosy neighbor called out, almost running over. Oh no, the last thing she needed right now. "Hello, Margie." "So, what's he like, this young lawyer? Isn't it risky, given what happened?" Susan felt herself turn red. "I don't know what you mean." "Come on, Susie, you can tell me. Everyone knows about you and that young lawyer, the one who had the tragedy with his wife. Isn't that scary? Are you sure he won't bring you trouble?" Susan couldn't believe how mean Margie sounded. It was an accident. He didn't cause it. Well, it seems to have worked out for him. So what's really going on? You left Jonathan for someone like him? Susan slammed the car door shut, turned away, and walked into her house without saying anything more. Jonathan held her as she cried in their bed. He felt good about how things were going. "What's wrong, baby?" "They're awful. Everyone is awful to me. They think I'm a bad person." "Shh," he said softly. "Things will get better. Just do what feels right and ignore them. Why can't they understand? Haven't they ever loved someone? I can't control my feelings." He gently rubbed her back. "You still have us, your family. We care about you." She cried. "Do you? Do you really care about me, Jonathan?" He sighed. "I've always cared about you, baby." "Please," she said. "I'm worried," he said softly. "I know he has other close connections. I'm not sure if he brings trouble with him." She stiffened. "How could you think that?" "You've been careful, right?" Jonathan asked. I don't want to talk about it," she said, clearly uncomfortable as she moved away a bit. "I can't stay with you until I know you're being honest with me." "But we've been together for a year without any issues." "Thanks for reminding me," Jonathan replied, his voice flat. "I got checked. I'm fine. It's not fair to risk the lives of our kids. He's seeing other women. Who knows what that might bring? He wouldn't do that. He cares about me." "You care about me, and yet this happened," Jonathan pointed out. She sighed, clearly frustrated. "I'm your wife, Jonathan. Can we please move past this?" He pulled her close and hugged her. "I wish I could, but not until I know you're being honest and that you're done seeing him." Then the magazines started arriving. Miss Cosmo, Good Housekeeping, Southern Living, Homes and Gardens, all for Heather Patton, a constant reminder. A big picture was taped to his front door. It showed her gravestone. It was ruined. Under the words, loving wife, someone had written, murdered and replaced with a cheating wife. He tore the picture into tiny pieces and spent hours trying to clean the gravestone, scrubbing until every trace of the message was gone. The police found him after someone called them, questioned him about what he was doing, and even warned him for vandalism. He became very upset, shouting and crying, and they had to hold him back until he could calm down enough to explain. They checked his ID and compared it to the gravestone. One of the officers looked at him with disgust. "Oh, you, the wife thief! We know who you are." 3 days later, he was back at the gravestone, cleaning it once more. "Yes, I got your other messages. No, I can't make a payment. I lost my job and I don't have any money." Max Schritter hung up, smiling to himself. It was the third call in 2 weeks. Things were going just as he wanted. He looked at the picture he held in his hand, smiling. He planned to give it to the boy after work. It wouldn't prove anything, but it should make the boy question things. He shuffled through the papers on his kitchen table. Notes, comments, background details, all taken from the house. He had a lot of information. For Max, this was exciting. It gave him something to do, a new goal, even if just for a little while, righting a wrong, punishing those he thought were guilty. They were, in his view, very guilty. Ranches don't close on weekends. Jonathan worked but took his family along. He helped his eldest daughter onto the back of the gentle old quarter horse. "Do you really think that's safe?" Susan asked. "We've done this for 4 generations. Buttercup is a friendly horse. She'll take care of our girl." Cindy beamed with pride, petting the horse's mane and leaning over to talk to her. Jonathan held the bridle and began to walk, keeping an eye on his daughter, showing her how to keep her balance by gently pushing her knee to help her sit right. He thought it was funny how the girls quickly got excited about riding. After a few turns, he passed the reins to his little girl. Her smile filled his heart with warmth. She was getting the hang of it, moving in the old Western saddle and going with the horse's steps. He could see the horse relax. The horse felt her was at ease, and that made everything good. "Your turn?" he asked Susan. "Me? Are you serious?" she replied. "Come on, Susan. Relax a bit. Give it a try." With a little encouragement, he helped her get in the saddle while explaining what to do. She looked very nervous, much more than Cindy had been. His daughter seemed like she was born to ride. She guided her horse next to her mother, chatting and laughing until Susan felt safe enough to move faster than a slow crawl. Jonathan slipped his foot into the stirrup and pulled himself onto the big gray horse. With a gentle cluck and a pat on the neck, he pressed his heels and headed off at a trot, slowing to a gentle walk when he reached his 2 girls. "Not so bad, right?" he asked. "You do this for hours every day?" Susan questioned. "Sometimes. Each day is different. There are days when I hardly leave the garage." "You really enjoy this?" she asked. "I love it." He glanced at his daughter, feeling her energy and eagerness to do more, trot, gallop, and bond with her horse. He felt bad for not getting her riding earlier. They were ranchers for 5 generations now. It was in their blood. He had been foolish to keep her away. Rich sat up in bed, listening. There it was, the crying and sobbing. Then it stopped. He closed his eyes, trying hard to sleep. He failed. When the soft crying started again, he pulled the pillow over his head to block it out. "I'm sorry," he whispered to himself. Outside, John took another sip of his cold coffee. Just 1 more hour and his shift would end. He adjusted his earphones and listened to the sounds around him. He pressed the remote and started a recording of a fire crackling. "It was an accident!" someone shouted. He decided to wait 5 minutes and then check on it. "Jonathan?" He reached out and put his arm around his wife. "Yes, honey? I need some money. I'm almost out of gas." Jonathan pulled his arm back. "Get it from someone else. Please. I have a job interview at Jenkins's Hardware." "I didn't know you were looking for a job," he replied. "I'm worried about our money situation. Nancy can start kindergarten this year, and I can work while the kids are in school." "You're not going to use the money to meet someone, are you?" "No, Jonathan, I promise. It's for gas so I can go to the interview and take care of our kids. What if there's an emergency? I'm on empty." He took out his wallet and handed her 2 20s. "I trust you. Please don't make me look foolish." "I wouldn't do that. I love you." "You've done it before." Jonathan said coldly. She lowered her head. Why wasn't Rich answering her calls? Was he really dating someone else? They hadn't talked in over a week. I'm sorry. Jonathan stared at his paycheck. The part he got was only a little more than a third of what he used to earn at his old job. He would have made even less if Uncle Len hadn't given him a raise when he took care of the ranch vehicles. With the extra money that his grandfather got, he wasn't making much less than before when he worked overtime. Uncle Len mentioned he could get a small share of the profits if he stayed at the ranch. It would only be 1% each year for the first 5 years, but it would add up. He would be a partner, a small partner, but it felt good. He'd never own most of it. That would go to Len's oldest son. So far, Will didn't seem interested in the family business. That's just how it worked. But his mother got 10% of the profits, and one day, that might be his too. He pulled up his pants. He would need to buy new ones soon. This was the second time he had to replace his pants. He wasn't sure what size he was, but he had to punch 2 new holes in his belt. All this hard work was changing him. He joined the other workers for a drink at the Spur and Saddle. Mikey, a big guy, nudged him in the ribs. That girl seems to like you. Jonathan looked at the table with 3 women. The pretty redhead was definitely looking his way. He called to the bartender. What are they drinking? He asked, nodding at the table. A pitcher of Shiner. I'll take one. The old bartender nodded and put the pitcher in front of him. He walked over to the table and stood by an empty chair holding the pitcher. Just so you know, I'm not Greek. The girls looked confused until the redhead smiled. And you're bringing gifts? She asked. He smiled back, poured their drinks, and then went back to the bar. A minute later, the blonde tapped him on the shoulder. You're joking, right? Aren't you going to join us for a drink? I've decided to stop drinking beer, he said. She glanced at his drink. Jonathan grinned. I haven't stopped drinking Jim Beam yet. Then bring your Jim Beam over and hang out with us. The next hour was fun. He met nice people, got 2 phone numbers and 3 hugs. Maybe Grandpa was right. Meeting new people was easy. Susan's life was getting tough. People in town were making fun of her. She had given up her fancy coffees and was getting Dunkin' Donuts instead. That was all she could afford. She was waiting at the drive-thru when the old man handed her the coffee. He looked at her and quickly turned away. Then he came back with a smirk. He handed something out of the window. One Cheater's Special, he said with a grin. Her hand shook with anger when she took it. She saw the lid was loose and didn't want to think about what he might have done to it. She remembered a time she lost her cool at another shop over bad service. They had laughed at her, and she felt so ashamed. She glared at the man, opened the lid, and poured the coffee out. He just smiled. Maybe you're not as foolish as they say. Rich was scared to charge his phone. He never knew when his wife would call, ready to vent her anger. He knew it was not her fault, but when she called, he lost all reason. He felt people watching him everywhere. They looked at him like he was guilty. It wasn't his fault. Why couldn't they see that? The little notes were the hardest to handle. They were small reminders in her neat writing. Remember that little bar. Do you still have that dress? Cancun, remember Cancun? Why, Richie? Why? Yes, he remembered everything. He opened the albums Susan had kept hidden. She looked so beautiful during their trips. He had loved her so much. Now she was gone. All his fault. He took another drink from the bottle, feeling the sting. She had trusted him. It was an accident, he whispered, tears falling on the pictures. Max, the judge, the colonel, and John were all reviewing their notes. The colonel had his map out, marked with colored dots, showing each meeting over the past month. Do you think he'll run soon? He hardly goes out in public now, John asked, looking at the latest updates. He'll crack long before she does. Stubborn she is, Max said, sounding a bit impressed. Maybe we should slow down and let them both see how bad things are, the judge suggested. No, Max replied sharply. If she's going to be stubborn, we should put on more pressure. The judge shook his head. Judith's not going to like this, he muttered. The others laughed. 52 years and you're still under her control? John joked. At least I'm still in a relationship, Max shot back. How's Rosie doing? All right, enough, the colonel interrupted. We have calls to make. Let's ramp it up. Poor guys. Susan wiped her face in shock. That woman had spit on her. She was sitting outside the coffee shop where they used to meet. It had been almost 2 weeks since she last heard from him. She had even gotten brave enough to go to his house, but he hadn't answered the door. His car was there. He must have been home. She used her key to open the door, but it was locked with a chain. "Rich?" she called. "Rich, honey? It's me." No answer. The place smelled bad and looked dark. Maybe he was gone. Gone with that woman from the picture. How could he do this to her? What had she done wrong? She walked back in her mind to their coffee shop, where they had talked for hours. She could hear his voice and remember their chats, lost in those memories. "Look at her," a woman said as she walked by on the sidewalk, just outside the area where people were sitting. Susan looked up and felt the spit hit her face. She was in shock. She heard the whispers and jokes around her. Wiping her face with a napkin, she felt tears begin to fall. How had her life changed so fast? She used to have everything: a caring family, a good partner, young love. But now she only had memories and the scorn of those around her. It was not fair. What had she done wrong? She never wanted any of this. It was love. How could that be wrong? It wasn't her fault. Then a young man, maybe in college, sat across from her and smiled. "You shouldn't be crying, pretty lady. Let me buy you a drink." She shook her head. "No thanks, I'm married." He shrugged. "I've seen that not stop anyone. Come on, let's have a drink. You're really pretty." "Please, just leave me alone," she said firmly. He leaned over a little. "If you change your mind, we'll be at the Spur and Saddle. Just thought you might like to have some fun." "Leave me alone!" she shouted. "Wow, lady, no need to be upset. I just thought you could use some company. No hard feelings, okay?" Susan lowered her head into her hands, letting the tears flow. Jonathan watched as his grandpa handed a rope to his son. He showed him how to hold the loop open and where to hold the two ropes, a foot or so from the main part, the eye of the lariat. He explained how to coil it and how to hold his other hand. The pole sticking out of the hay was their target. On his third try, he swung the rope at his side, then over his head. He was learning to time the throw as he moved his arm forward quickly, the loop staying open as it fell over the pole. Both he and Susan clapped. Cindy joined in too. Little Nancy was too busy playing with Grandpa's old dog, Blue, a 12-year-old blue heeler. Every ranch had them, he thought. His grandpa always had at least one. They were hard workers, lived outside, but his grandpa loved them. When they started getting slow and tired, he never put them down. No, he couldn't do that. They were his friends, and he was loyal to them. They moved inside, got old, became lazy and spoiled. They spent their days with one master, always happy with the slightest touch or a kind word, staying by his side. Their loyalty was rewarded. Grandpa gently squeezed Joey's shoulder. Jonathan remembered that feeling. It was nice. Not perfect, but it's a start. That was as close to praise as he would ever get. One day, he would learn to value this moment. He felt Susan lean against him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "He's great with kids. I never thought he would be," she said softly. "He always has been. Some of the best days of my life were with him and Dad here. We had some wonderful times, didn't we?" she said. It felt good to be together as a family, enjoying the kids and the outdoors. "We sure did." "It's not too late, is it, to have more moments as a family, as husband and wife?" He shrugged. "I don't know, Susan. I really don't know." Rich stood in the waiting area, asking the woman at the desk, "Please, I need to see her. She must have some time." The silver-haired woman pretended to check the schedule. "I'm sorry, Mr. Patton. Dr. Schaefer is fully booked. Maybe next week." "Oh, wait, she's on vacation then. How about the week after that? You should really make an appointment." "I've tried. You have to let me in. I don't know what else to do." "I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to wait at least 2 weeks. Would you like to book an appointment for then? I can put you down for Thursday at 3:30 the week after next." "Just 5 minutes, that's all I need. Can she at least refill my prescriptions?" "She's very busy today getting ready for her vacation. Why don't you go home? And I will talk to her when I can. We'll call you if she can fit you in tomorrow before she leaves." Rich nodded slowly and walked out the door, feeling defeated. "Just leave, you home wrecker," Ellen thought. She picked up the phone to call someone. Susan hung up. She didn't know why she even tried. All she got was a busy signal. He couldn't be on the phone that much. Where is he when I need him, she thought. She had given up so much for him. Her time, loyalty, her family, maybe even her marriage. She had come whenever he called. Now he was ignoring her. It didn't seem right. What Susan didn't know was that it was easy to block her calls. The last time John Crumb was at the house, he dialed 60 and went through the menus until both her home and cell phone numbers were blocked. Jonathan had done the same, keeping her calls from getting through. It would be a cold day before they used those phones to talk again. Jonathan pulled the reins to the side, guiding the stubborn old cow. He wondered why she wasn't following the herd to the new pasture. She turned, seemingly headed for the bushes, when Vincent, his cattle dog, nipped at her leg, making her change direction. He noticed her careful steps and thought she might be hurt. It took a while to get her where he wanted her. 2 ropes around her neck and an hour of work wore her out enough so he felt he could get close. It was a job for 2 people, but they didn't have that many today. He was sure he could manage it. Miguel found him there, treating her leg, moving in slowly. He didn't want to scare her. "It's dangerous to be alone," the old man said. "I didn't want her to wander off or get hurt. I thought I'd finished this an hour ago," he replied. Miguel, with his skilled eye, looked over Jonathan's work before giving a small nod. "Can you handle it?" "Yes, sir. I'll get her through the gate in an hour." "Lock it behind you." Jonathan felt proud of his work. He hadn't felt that way in a long time. His shoulders hurt, his hands were sore, and he hoped to return before dark. Still, he was happier than he expected to be. He took off the ropes, speaking softly to calm the cow. Vincent lay a few feet away, waiting patiently. Jonathan petted the young dog's head and praised him. "Good boy, Vincent." He smiled, remembering Joey picking the name. His son thought the dog's mixed blue, black, and gray fur looked like a night full of stars. Jonathan didn't really see it that way, but he was proud that Joey knew what a starry night looked like. Grandpa agreed that Vincent was a better name than just dog. The cow seemed nervous as she handed him a drink. "Where are the kids?" Jonathan asked. "With your mom." He raised an eyebrow. "Just until morning. Please don't be upset. We need some time alone." He smelled the steak cooking and realized how hungry he was. Lately, he always felt hungry. That's what hard work does to a man. She pulled him to his chair and struggled to get his boots off. When the second boot came off, she fell backwards. He had to laugh at her, dressed for fun with his dusty boot in her hand, sitting on the floor. She got up and called him to the dinner table. His plate had a big T-bone steak and a loaded baked potato. Hers had a smaller fillet and some asparagus. One good thing about working on a ranch was the free beef. There was a piece of paper on his plate. He picked it up, and she said softly, "I'm clean. I haven't seen him since that night. I won't be with him anymore." He got up and walked around the table to hug her. "I'm sorry. I know this is hard for you." She shook her head. "No, don't apologize. I'm sorry. I don't know how this happened. Please forgive me." He lifted her in his arms and she giggled. "But the dinner!" "We can warm it up later," Jonathan said, carrying her to their bedroom. They hadn't been close for almost 2 months. Jonathan felt a rush of feelings as they held each other, memories flooding back. She gasped, a mix of emotions washing over her as he held her tightly. They both knew they were trying to reconnect and remember the bond they once shared. Her breathing grew heavy, and Jonathan found himself deep in thought, reflecting on their past and what was to come. He held her face gently, looking carefully into her eyes. He knew this moment was special and delicate. Their dinner was still waiting, reminding them of what they had to work on. They both understood that they needed to take their time to fix what had been broken. Susan looked up into his eyes, hoping for his forgiveness. She wanted to show how sorry she was and tried hard to make things right. Jonathan looked back at her, confused about his feelings. He helped her up and led her to the edge of the bed. They felt a strong connection, filled with feelings they didn't completely understand. Susan felt overwhelmed with emotions. She wanted to feel close to him again. She had a deep longing to reconnect. Jonathan held her tightly, his grip strong. He wanted to get back what they had lost. Every move he made had purpose, and every touch meant something. Susan felt a rush of feelings inside her, peaking as they came together like they hadn't in a long time. Afterward, they lay side by side, quiet but still connected. Jonathan reached for her, gently resting his hand on her hip. He noticed changes in her, how different she looked now. It showed him how much time had passed and all they had gone through. They spent the evening together, enjoying a simple meal. The atmosphere felt calm, a moment of peace for them. Later, they showered together, letting the water wash away their past arguments. Jonathan held her close as they fell asleep, finding comfort in being near each other. "I'm going to miss this." Susan walked out of the back door of the ranch looking for her kids. Her feet hurt from standing all day, but she was happy to be with her family again. She saw a group of men standing in a circle inside the fence. She rushed forward, curious about what was happening. Len's wife, Grace, leaned against the fence and grabbed Susan's arm. "Leave them alone!" "What's going on?" Susan asked. She saw her son standing next to Jason Crum, a boy from Cindy's class. When Joey turned, Susan noticed his black eye and swollen lip, but he was smiling. "They're teaching your boy some lessons," Grace said, holding on to Susan's tense arm. "I don't want him to get hurt." "Well, he's learning to stand up for himself." Susan was surprised to see her daughter Cindy come out with a tray of drinks. The 10-year-old walked over to her brother, letting him pick a drink first before smiling shyly at Jason. "What's happening here?" Cindy would usually be the one standing up to Joey, not serving him. "They fight like cats and dogs." Grace pulled Susan closer to the railing and wrapped her arm around her waist. "He looked out for her. He stood up for her when it mattered." Susan gasped. He doesn't fight. We don't allow it." "Good thing he did today. Some kids at school were bothering her. Joey stepped in to help, and even though he got hurt, he kept trying." "They're just kids. This shouldn't happen." Grace looked at her in surprise. "Do you really think talking would have helped? Sometimes kids need to stand up for each other. It's not fair to just expect them to walk away. He could have really gotten hurt. That doesn't change the fact that he protected his sister. That's brave. Other kids will see that. This is just part of growing up." Cindy walked over to them, leaning against the railing and watching. "Are you okay, honey?" Susan asked carefully. "Yeah," her daughter answered, still looking at the crowd. "Isn't he great, Mama?" Susan saw how much Cindy admired him. "Who are you talking about, Cindy?" "Jason. The way he stood up for me. They will think twice about bothering me again as long as he and Joey are around." Susan didn't notice Max walk up behind her. "You've raised a wonderful kid, Susan. No matter what anyone else says, you can be proud of your son. I know I am." She watched her boy get back up, brushing off his jeans. A ranch hand showed him how to hold his arm up. She wanted to run out, hug him, and keep him safe. She saw her little boy kick with his boot and follow up with a strong swing. He had fought to protect his sister against 3 older boys. He reminded her of his father. "I am proud of him. Please don't let him get hurt, Max." Max chuckled. "It's not him you should worry about. The boy has guts. He never gives up." "Where's my husband? Why isn't he here?" "He's dealing with an irrigation problem. He probably doesn't even know what's happening yet. He'll be back soon. The ranch doesn't stop because of one little fight." Susan remembered Grace saying Cindy was just like her mother. It was easy to see why the other kids picked on her. It wasn't fair. None of it was. Now the kids were paying for it. Would her nightmare ever end? "Oh no, this is going to be bad," Officer Banks said, holding a handkerchief to his nose. His partner took out some Vicks and rubbed a bit under his nose, then handed it to the younger officer. He would learn. They called out again, but got no answer. The house was a mess, with papers all over and dirty plates in the living room and kitchen. The bad smell was strongest from the back of the house. They followed it into a bedroom, their eyes watering. "This is not good," Banks said. What they saw was upsetting. A man lay on the floor, surrounded by scattered photos and letters. A bottle of vodka and empty pill containers told them what they needed to know. The mirrors in the room were broken. "I can't understand how someone could end up like this," Officer Gilroy said, shaking his head. He turned to his partner. "Call it in. Nothing else for us here. Jonathan sat with the Eagles, and they all looked at him. I thought he'd run away, not take the easy way out," Grandpa said. "Leave that house and all the memories. It wasn't what I wanted. Maybe he really was sad." Jonathan shrugged. "It doesn't bother me. He made his choices." "Do you still want to finish what we started?" Grandpa asked. Carl Jenkins spoke up. "She's doing a good job at the store. It would be a shame to let her go. You and your family are all she talks about now. I don't know if it matters, but she seems to care about you." Jonathan nodded. I think she does as much as she can. No, this doesn't change anything. She's back now, but who knows when she might leave again. I want to move on. Let's finish it. His grandfather reached out and squeezed his wrist tightly. Those old hands were strong, like they could crush a walnut. Jonathan understood this was as close to a hug as he would get. It's going to be hard on the kids. They're good kids, you know. I don't know how they made it out of that situation, but they did. I know, Jonathan replied. I won't shut her out of their lives. I just can't forget what she did. It's been a long time. Susan felt tired but better about things. It had been over 3 months since her life had fallen apart. It was tough. Really hard, to be honest. But things were getting better. Spending time on the ranch with the kids was good for them, helping them heal. She smiled to herself. Things between them were going well. They had grown closer and spent more time together. He came home tired from working, but he was never too tired to spend time with her. His energy amazed her, and she valued it. She knew that her choice to try new things was helping. It felt right. He deserved her best. He loved her. He had forgiven her. Last night he held her close and they embraced. Their bond had grown stronger. She understood his hesitation and felt safe in his arms. He had whispered softly in her ear, I love you, Susan. I always have. I always will. I want you to know I forgive you. I'm sorry for everything. She had started to cry, hugging him tightly, his strong arms wrapped around her, giving her support. He had shown his love gently, and they shared a special moment. It brought them closer together, strengthening their bond. Everything was going to be all right, better than all right. Jonathan got home early for once. It had been a busy day, but the morning rain changed things. Uncle Len knew it was a big day for him, so he let him leave early. He saw the for sale sign on the front lawn. The house had gone into foreclosure. They had 30 days to move out. Half of the kids' things had already been moved to his grandfather's house, slowly and quietly. They had rooms ready for when they stayed over on the weekend, that's what they were told. He knew this would be tough. It shouldn't be. She had made bad choices before, but after 11 years, 3 kids, and some time to think, the hurt felt a little less sharp. A little. Not enough. He took a shower and put on his best shirt and clean jeans. He looked in the mirror at his tanned face, trimmed his beard, and checked how he looked. A new man was staring back at him. A better man in many ways, but also sadder. This wasn't the life he had wanted. He went into the living room and opened a bottle of her favorite wine. He poured 2 glasses and placed them on the coffee table, moving the papers aside. Jonathan adjusted the glasses for the second time. She did this. Not me. He just had to think back to how she had talked to him that first night. She had called him her great lover, the man who understood her, threatening him, walking out of their home to be with another man, leaving him in so much pain. What kind of selfish person would do that? Thinking about it erased any doubts he had. The door opened and he stood there, feeling nervous. Jonathan, why is there a for sale sign on our house? Are we moving? He walked over, took her hand, and helped her sit down. Sweetheart, he said, the words stuck in his throat. We need to talk. She looked at the table, noticing the 2 wine glasses. Then her eyes fell on the papers next to them. When she saw the words original petition for divorce, her face changed. She looked into his eyes, seeking sadness or anger, but found nothing. Why? She asked, her voice shaking. You had an affair for a year, Susan. You wanted me to accept it. I'm not that kind of person. I'm sorry. She could barely breathe, her hands trembling. But you said you loved me, that you forgave me. I do love you. I always will. You were my first true love and a wonderful wife for 9 great years. You are the mother of my beautiful children, a great mom. I forgive you for everything, but that's not enough. Please don't do this, Jonathan. You don't want a divorce. It will turn into a big mess. I'll fight you every step of the way. I want my family. I don't want a divorce. It's done. I filed the papers. The process server will be here soon to serve you. We have 30 days to leave the house. I'll take the kids to Grandpa's. He has the space for them, and you know they love the ranch. I won't keep you from them. We'll share custody, and you can see them whenever you want. No! You can't take my kids. I have rights. Where will you live with them? How will you take care of them? Here, I'll keep them here. I won't let you sell my house, not ever. It's not our house anymore. It belongs to the bank. It's in foreclosure. She stared at him, shocked, trying to understand what he was saying. Foreclosure? How? I haven't paid the mortgage in 4 months. I don't make enough money now. But why didn't I know this? Because I didn't want you to. In that moment, she understood. It had always been about the divorce. He never wanted to give her a chance. It was all planned. How could you pretend for 4 months? Lying to me. How could you do this? I just had to think about the 2 years you lied to me. A whole year with another man, sharing your love with him. You made a joke out of our marriage. It was easy for you. She felt her anger rising. I am still their mother. The courts will give them to me. You know they will. I will make your life hard, Jonathan. If you do this, you won't see them again. I promise you won't. Where will you live? How will you care for them? He asked gently. I guess I will go back to Rich. He will take me in. He cares about me. She knew that was unlikely since he had cut off all contact with her, but still, maybe once she explained. You don't know? Jonathan asked, worry on his face. Know what? Rich is dead. He killed himself, overdosed on sleeping pills. Susan struggled to believe his words. Deep down, she felt it was true. Without her, Rich might have fallen back into his sadness. She thought of how he was after she left him the first time. It wasn't her fault. She tried to talk to him. She wanted to see him. He was the one who cut her off. She had tried. She went to visit him. She never wanted to end their relationship like that. Oh God, was he dead all along? How long? Why? Did her leaving cause this? Did he get the help he needed? No, he couldn't have survived. Not without her. Maybe this wasn't true. That must be it. Jonathan was lying to hurt her, just like she had hurt him. It had to be a lie. Rich couldn't be dead. Jonathan held her, waiting for her to calm down. She looked dazed and didn't respond. Susan, he said softly, repeating her name. Finally, her breathing steadied and she leaned against him. She began to cry, first softly, then more deeply. He pulled her close. He really is gone, isn't he? She whispered. 5 days now, I'm sorry, I thought you knew. What will I do now? She asked sadly. I guess your parents will take you in at least for a while. You have your job. You're still a wonderful woman. You'll find someone else, someone who can accept what I couldn't. You can see the kids as often as you want. I want them with me, she said firmly. I know, but your parents don't have enough space. I don't know how you can pay for a big enough house for all of you. You wouldn't want them cramped up together in a small room, would you? She shook her head. Grandpa has plenty of room. Miguel's niece will help keep the house clean and watch the kids when I'm not there. Grandpa may not be happy with you, but he has agreed to let you come to the house and see the kids any time. You could help me. Child support and alimony will help. I make less than $20,000 a year now. I might be able to give about $500. It won't be enough. They have a big house and a huge backyard to play in. They won't need anything. Grandpa has a lot of money. He loves them very much. What can you give them? They are my children, she cried. Yes, they are, and they will still be your children. Why can't we go back to how things were, Jonathan? We love each other. The past couple of months have been great. I made a mistake. Don't punish me forever. I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm sorry. I can never trust you again. I will always worry about when you might be with someone else. I can't handle that. I don't want to. I'm moving on now, and you need to move on too. I can't. I know I can't. I'll feel lost without my family. I don't see a reason to live. I hope you don't feel that way. It would be hard for the kids. The kids? Don't you care about them? Of course I do, but that's not enough. You betrayed my trust. It hurt me deeply. She trembled as she heard the harsh truth in his words. And now you want to hurt me? Yes. She tried to resist, but she felt too weak. She was crushed. Her parents were on her side, angry with Jonathan for keeping the kids from her. During a long, hard dinner, he told them they could see the kids whenever they wanted. Susan could also have time with them. If she got herself together and had room for them, they could share custody. Dinner was at his grandfather's house, and it was clear that the kids were happy there. 3 new puppies played with them. Cindy rode her horse every day and wanted to show her grandparents. Joey was proud in his work clothes with dusty boots and a worn-out Stetson. Nancy sat in her great-grandfather's lap, smiling as he read to her, letting them talk for a bit. She had him wrapped around her finger, and everyone knew it. They were home, happy. She couldn't take that away from them. She signed the papers and moved on with her life. There was no alimony. She made just as much money as he did on paper. He didn't ask for child support and offered to share custody, with him caring for the kids most of the time. They didn't have much to split, except for a few pieces of furniture he kept for her. In the end, he gave her a check for half of their savings, which was $1,120. After 11 years, she got just $112 a year. Susan lost her job at Jenkins Hardware the week after the divorce. They said times were tough and she was one of the newest workers. She lay in her old bed back at her parents' house, wondering what had happened to her life. She had everything. Now, she felt like she had nothing. Absolutely nothing. Jonathan felt happy about their earlier time together, but he still wanted to enjoy more. "Come on, let's go," she laughed, playfully pulling him closer. She was full of life, and he liked this bond they shared. How did she ever give this up? The young woman wondered aloud. He quickly pushed that thought away. There was a time when such words would have made him feel sad, but not now. She was encouraging, telling him what she liked, and he enjoyed hearing her words. It made their time together feel even better. "Just like that," she said softly, moving with him. "So nice," she sighed a little later. She was getting closer, and he moved to match her energy. He felt he had really connected with her, and they both reached a moment of shared happiness. He always made sure she was happy before thinking of himself. He leaned over, and she wrapped her arms around him. The bond was strong, and he could feel her joy as she relaxed. They lay together, breathing slowly. "Do you need to leave soon?" Jonathan asked. "No, I can stay as long as you want," she said carefully. He understood she was hinting at staying over, but he wasn't ready for that. She was great company, but he had doubts. He thought about people he admired, like Katie, who had always been kind. He thought about how things might have been different, but let those thoughts go. He turned over, thinking about what to do next. Meanwhile, Susan sat with her grandmother in the cozy parlor, sharing tea. "You look awful, dear," Grandma Bridget said. "I know," Susan replied softly, avoiding her grandmother's gaze. She thought about the sharp words and the coldness from her grandfather. "It's been over a year, Susan. You need to move on. You're still young, not yet 30. 35, Grandma," the old woman chuckled. "A baby. I wish I could be 35 again. Want to switch places?" "No, dear, not a chance. I could never do that to your grandfather. He deserves better." "Am I really that bad?" "No, honey, you made some mistakes, but you can move past them." She took a sip of her tea. "Did you come just for a visit, or do you want something?" Susan looked at her grandmother, who had been married for 56 years. She might have the answers. "I want him back, Grandma. I know he feels lonely. He dates, but it never lasts long. I see the way he looks at me during Sunday dinner. We were great together. I made a mistake and want to make it right. I want my family back." "That's a big wish, sweetie. You hurt him deeply." "I know. I will do anything. Do you think it's possible? Am I just dreaming?" Grandma sat back, really looking at her granddaughter. She was having a hard time. She was not the happy girl she used to be, but at 35 years old, she still had hope. She had once made him love her. She had paid a price for it, and maybe she had learned something. Just maybe. "It's going to be tough. Winning his heart back won't be easy," said Grandma. Susan felt a spark of hope. Tough, but not impossible. "I'll do anything, Grandma. Just tell me what to do. Anything. Please." Bridget looked up at the shelf and saw a picture of her with her 4 close friends. They were cheerleaders back in the day, the most popular girls in school, the original Fab Five, now all married. Emma had just celebrated her 50th anniversary last month. Josephine was on her second marriage, going strong for 10 years. May Darren rest in peace. Her Jimmy was a good man. Thank goodness he took her secret to his grave. She still felt mixed feelings about that lost weekend. 55 years after high school, the five of them were still very close. They still turned heads wherever they went. Let me make some calls. We have a lot to do, you understand? Hey listeners, if you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.